this computer. Okay, so we got the recording turned on, uh, and I'm gonna let somebody else in. And tonight, for about 90 minutes, 2 hours, I'm gonna spend some time talking about, building the team that everybody wants to join. Building that culture, building that unity in the firehouse that's going to attract the hard charging firefighters. They're going to make people want to come to our firehouse. And then some of the things that we can do as we build the team to make sure that we get the right people in the right seats. One of the best quotes I've ever heard when it comes to building teams and leadership and holding people responsible was by Nick Saban, who said that his job was to get the right people on the bus, get them in the right seats, and then get the wrong people off of the bus. So I'm not going to dwell too hard on how to get the wrong people off of the bus. That's really in my discipline class, but I'm certainly going to talk about how to build that environment that attracts the good people. And I find that when we do that, the people who will cause problems tend to shy away because they don't want to be part of what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to kick it off and let's make sure everything works. I always put my contact information up. Uh, that's my email. The QR code, if you want to take a shot of that, that'll take you to my link tree, which gives you access to all my social media sites. It's got a contact button on it. It will also give you contact. It'll give you access to all the podcasts that I've done and all the magazine articles I've read. I've been, fortunate enough to be published in Fire Engineering, Firehouse, and I have done some stuff for a military base website, Beyond the Green Notebook, and there's some leadership stuff that I've written for them that you can also access through my link tree. So please feel free. And then at the very end, this slide will come up again. I put it up in the beginning just in case people have to duck out. I will, anytime I give this program, I always acknowledge Chief Bob Giorgio, who really developed this program and really put this whole process on the tracks in Cherry Hill. So what was going on, to give you a little backstory, we were going through some tremendous expansion in Cherry Hill. We saw it coming. We knew it was coming. We knew we were going to have to hire more firefighters. We knew we were going to have to staff more firehouses. And I had a conversation, with Chief Giorgio to say, hey, we can't turn our back on opportunity because there's no telling if the opportunity is going to present itself again. But we also need to be sensitive to the fact that we may very well be promoting people before they are truly ready to be promoted. So we've got to figure out a way to kind of fill the gap between who we're promoting and what we really expect them to do. And Chief told me, well, okay, that's a real great idea, Dennis. Go ahead and fix the problem. So I became the lead for our professional development class. And what you're looking at right now, or what you're going to look at over the next 2 hours, are like 5 bullet points that we'll put on a PowerPoint slide. So this is evolved into, or what we did back then in the day has evolved into what you're about to look at for the next 2 hours. But if it wasn't for Chief Giorgio's guidance and support, this would have never happened. So I always like to give an acknowledgement to a good friend and a mentor. So if we're talking about building that team that everybody wants to come to, what's what's the end state? What does that end state look like that we're building that's going to attract the people we want to attract? And I would say that we're talking about, building that mindset for a positive company environment that supports successful tactical operations. And, there's two parts to that sentence. Number one, that positive company environment. We're going to bring the good people. We're going to draw and attract the good people. And if we're doing that, that is going to allow us to be successful on the fire ground. But if we don't have that culture, that environment to start with, it's going to be very difficult to attract those good people. And without the good people, you all know what happens then. So that's what we're going to try to do. That's what we're looking at. That positive company environment that's going to support those, supports the successful tactical operations. And at the end of the day, go stand out in front of the supermarket for 20 minutes and ask people going in there, hey, listen, what do you expect out of your fire department? And that's what they're going to tell you. I mean, I'm going to, I'll throw $100 down that says everybody who you talk to wants that successful tactical operation. They want that successful outcome. When they call 911, they want professional problem solvers that can come to their emergency, whatever that emergency is. The garage door is stuck and it won't go up, or half the house is on fire and there's 3 kids trapped inside. It does not matter what that emergency is. In our eyes, it's an emergency to them. So they want us to show up, fix those problems, and restore a sense of security to their life. And as I said, if we're not building that positive company environment, we're not going to draw the people we need to have to do that. So here you go. Take a look, man. You can pick which ones do you want on your team. You want these guys? I've worked with those guys. I am familiar with each and every man in that picture. I've trained those men. I have worked with them. I've made runs with them. I fought fire with those guys. And I can tell you right now, if there's an emergency here at my house and those 4 guys pull up, knowing what I know, I will say that the outcome of that incident is going to be as good as it possibly can be because of those guys. Okay. Those guys are going to make good things happen. Or we can look at this guy. And if we look hard enough in any fire department, this guy is there. Right there. Our buddy, feet up, little blankie, bag of Cheetos, man, riding that recliner, watching TV. Okay? These are basically the ends of the spectrum. Okay. The guys on the left are in that very positive end, and the guy on the right, as I'm looking at the screen, is on that negative end. Everybody else and the different types of people fall in between, somewhere on a scale between that guy or those guys. So what ends up happening, in my opinion, is when you get the guy on the right of the screen, as I'm looking at the screen, when you get him or her in your firehouse, they tend to sway everybody else in that firehouse. Unless you got some real strong actors, the guy on the right is going to probably overpower most everything else that happens in the firehouse because they tend to be loud, they tend to be obnoxious, they tend to be bullies, and people just get tired of it. People don't want to confront them. People get to the point where they just want to get through their shift and go home so they don't have to deal with this cat anymore. So that's a real big problem. And we know, or I know from experience, that these 2 types of people exist in a fire department. And if we don't have that environment in the company, the guy on the right ends up taking over the company. Now, if we do all the things that I'm going to talk about, the people on the left side of the screen, they get empowered. They get energized. They get to the point where they will run the firehouse and they will manage the guy on the right if they even show up. I teach this all over the country. I mean, there's fire departments that do station assignments based on seniority and bid. And, there's some problems with that system, but I'm here to tell you that particular system is the best way to avoid getting a mutt assigned to your firehouse if you do the right things, because the mutts are not really interested in accountability, and they're not interested in performance metrics, and they're not interested in roles and responsibilities and accountability. They don't want any of that. They want to do what this guy's doing, man, sitting in a recliner, eating his Cheetos, running the TV channels. So if we decide we want the heavy hitters in our firehouse, then we've got to build an environment that the heavy hitters want to come to, not an environment that's going to allow this cat to take over. So one of the things that I always used to do, man, is I used to print this out and throw it on the kitchen table and ask people, okay, are we doing this? Okay, do we start at the company level, building a culture, attitudes, and training that produces competent professionals prepared to engage in life-saving services and who can execute the department's mission? Where are we on this chart? Are we doing these things? I used to love throwing it on the table, and I used to love hearing guys say, yeah, we're doing that. We're good. And, my simple question is, okay, why do you say that? Everybody can say yes. Everybody can look at this chart. I don't think anybody's going to say, oh, no, no, we're terrible. I mean, people don't wake up in the morning saying they want to be third best. People aren't going to wake up in the morning and tell their boss, hey, listen, boss, by the way, I really suck at my job. Just pay me every other Friday. Okay. People are going to say yes. Yes, we can do that. Yes, our culture, our attitudes, our training are dialed in. Yes, we have a firehouse full of competent professionals prepared to engage. And yes, we will execute the department's mission flawlessly. What makes you say that? Okay. So I think that this chart is a good roadmap. If we're doing these, if we're concentrating on the block on the very left, culture, attitude, and training, if we get that right, the byproduct will be those competent professionals, and competent professionals will be able to execute that mission. So I think this is a good measure. Throw it on the table. Like I said, I'd print this out and throw it on the table. Where are we, man? Are we doing this? Yeah. Tell me why you say that. I want to know. Give me some concrete reasons why you say yes. Well, we engage in training a minimum of an hour and a half a day. We have company standards for mask up, for hose line deployments, for throwing around loud. We maintain our equipment. The list of, I mean, there are 50 things I could write down on a list that would validate me saying yes to this. But if I'm not doing those things and somebody asks me, I'm not going to come up with a good answer. And that gave me, as a chief, a way to measure the firehouses, see where guys are, see what's going on. Do I have to look into things? Do I have to, rebrand, recraft what we're doing as an organization? This is so very true, man. I can do whatever I can do anything up at headquarters in the chief's office. But the real measure of success is what happens in the firehouse. So I can write, my mission statement. I can write my organizational core values. I can write, I can, write our strategies. I can write doctrine for the fire department. I can do all this type of stuff. I can create a document. We had a document in Cherry Hill called the Cherry Hill Way. It's the way we looked at things. It's the way we expected our people to look at this job, look at their profession, look at the mission. I can do all that. But if it's not being supported down in the firehouse, if that guy in the recliner with the blanket and the remote control isn't buying in on this stuff, it's not going to happen, because the culture in the firehouse will eat up anything that comes from headquarters. So so when we talk about culture, What is culture? Culture, in my opinion, is that the accepted norms within a group. It's how we behave when no one else is watching. Okay, so this chart, the backstory on this chart is I wrote all this out and I sent Scott Thompson down in the colony in Texas. I mean, if there is an expert on culture in the firehouse, I believe Scott Thompson would fit that description as the subject matter expert in terms of culture and the fire service. So I sent him the chart. He looked it over, and then we got on the phone. We talked about this for an hour. And he brought up some points and he asked some questions, which made me rethink some of this stuff. But when it was over and done with, I was convinced, excuse me, I was convinced that this document, this chart, is a good roadmap for building good culture in the firehouse. And if we look at each one of these boxes, and I'm going to talk about each one of them, if we're checking that box, not just merely checking it and saying, yeah, okay, but checking it because we're doing things in our firehouse that will make these traits, these characteristics a reality, then we're building that strong culture in the firehouse. So the very first thing Chief Thompson and I talked about was the concept of values. What does the firehouse value? And I'm going to expand on that a little bit later into the presentation. But for the time being, let me say this. If the fire department as an organization is just relying on the core values that the fire chief writes, there's a big disconnect between the chief's desk and engine 14 out there on the D platoon. Okay. And as a fire chief, I wrote organizational core values, and I felt that there was a lot of value in organizational core values. I made a big deal about our organizational core values when I was in charge of our recruits. But I also know that firefighters are firefighters. And I can put these fancy charts up, and posters and whatever. And sooner or later, people are just going to walk by without paying any attention. So the point of values being on this chart is what is specifically the values that your firehouse has that is going to connect you to the overarching core values in the organization. Talk about task and operational excellence. Task means that I want all my members to be able to execute their skills at an extremely high level. That means that I want my nozzle person to be able to deploy pre-connect. That means everybody on my company can mask up with their gloves on in a set time period. That means that we can throw a ladder. That means that we can do all the different tasks that make up fireground operations. And then operational excellence is my engine company pulls up, and regardless of where the fire is located, I'm going to be able to deploy, we will be able to deploy the right size line to the right place in the right amount of time. So, how prepared am I to stretch beyond the pre-connect? How prepared am I to make a 400-foot inch and three-quarter attack line? Because I go out and look at apartment complexes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. While I come back at 2 o'clock in the morning when everybody is there and there's a big party going on and I can't get in the parking lot, man, I may have to figure out a way to put together a 400-foot inch and three-quarter attack line. So can I do that? How good am I at getting all the equipment I need to perform vertical ventilation on a 2-story single family dwelling off of the rig to the seaside of the yard, ladders up on the roof, making the cut? Okay. How good am I at doing that? What is my standard? How long is it going to take me? If my company turns into block, what's the battalion chief saying? Thank God they're here, or uh-oh, this ain't going to be good. Okay, that's what operational excellence is. I talk about learning and teaching. Everybody in my company, everybody in my platoon, everybody in my command needs to be willing to learn. Okay, excuse me. Doesn't matter first year or your 30th year on the job. There is somebody who is going to be able to teach you something if you're willing to learn. I mean, in terms of teaching, I want us to be teaching each other, which means, and I'm the oldest guy here, I imagine, probably, more than likely I am. And there's a lot of people who are going to see this presentation who are a lot younger than I am. It's my job as part of this culture that is geared at operational success to figure out how I can connect with the younger people so that they can get this message. It's not their job to connect with me. I have the information. I have to present it in a way that's going to resonate with them. I talk about camaraderie. Okay. I'm not saying you got to be best friends with everybody in Firehouse, go to the kids' birthday parties and all this other type of stuff. But you know what? You got to get along. We've got to work together. Success on the fire ground is a byproduct of teamwork. And if we let personalities, preconceived notions, prejudice, bias enter into our relationships, they will negatively impact us on the fire ground. I mean, I had a guy who used to work for me named whistled all day long, man. From the minute he walked through the door until the minute he went home, he's walking around whistling. Went underneath my skin, drove me crazy. But you know what? I had to say to myself, I probably do some things that drive him crazy. Let it go. Let it go. Get over it. Understand that I have got, as the boss, as the designated adult, get along with everybody on the company. So instead of just coming down on them, saying, hey, man, would you stop that whistling? It's driving me crazy. Let it go, man. Let it go. There are more important things to worry about. It's all about pride, man. I want you to be proud of who you are. I want you to be proud of this profession. I want you to be proud of this firehouse. I want you to be proud of this platoon. I told my people, man, hey, you want to cross the line? Talk bad about us and let it come back. Okay. If you don't have anything good to say, just don't say anything at all. But hopefully you're proud of where you are. Hopefully you're proud of the people you're working with. Hopefully you're proud of the work that we're doing. Okay. Talk about respect. Okay. Respect, I have to earn your respect and you got to earn mine. And we need to respect each other because at some point in time, we're going to see things differently. So we've got to just accept the fact that there's differences of opinion. And at the end of the day, if I'm the boss, then you got to respect the fact that I get the final say, that I get to make the decision. And the decision that I make may not be the one you would have made, but at this point in time, I'm the boss. So we just got to roll with it, man. I talk about competitiveness, and competitiveness is all about being the best that I can be. I don't want to compete with anyone else. I need to compete with myself. I need to bring myself to the highest level I possibly can, which means I don't get too concerned about what the other shifts and platoons are doing. I don't really care what they do, man. They're not working with me. I'm not working with them. Now, if they've got something that's going to make us better on the fire ground, man, I'm all ears. But other than that, man, they are who they are. We are who we are. Focus on us. How do we make ourselves better? Okay. I know I talk about responsibility and accountability. I think there's a big difference. Accountability is, man, you do something wrong. It's like, all right, man, I'm accountable. Whatever. I take my lumps and I move on. And I think that when we do make mistakes, we certainly do need to step up and own those mistakes. But I think more importantly is the responsible people. They know their job, they know how to do their job, and they get their job done without somebody standing over the top of them. Are they going to make a mistake every once in a while? Sure they are. But more than likely, people like that, the ramifications of their mistake are not really all that bad. And when they make a mistake, they're the first ones to stand up and say, hey, man, that was on me. Hey, listen, I made a bad call. Hey, listen, I went left. I should have went right. Hey, listen, I didn't get that line where it needed to go. Hey, listen, I didn't set myself up on the right 45 on that door and I created a pinch point. Hey, listen, I didn't make a good estimation on that hose. Like, hey, I should have killed another 70-foot hose so we're not all jammed up in the front yard. Hey, I should have pulled, I should have thrown that ladder in a different place. The list goes on and on, but responsible people don't have any problem being accountable because for the most part, they don't have to be accountable because they know their job, they get their job done, they do it the right way the first time. So that's my take on culture, man. I think that's what's important. That's what I look at. And I would say that if you're a boss or you're a senior person, if you use this model, it will help you tremendously. And if you're interested, you can use the QR code, send me a contact. And if you provide me your email, I'll send you a copy of the chart along with the descriptions of the 8 different things on it. Okay. I tell people take ownership of your firehouse, man. Take ownership of your firehouse all the time. My office down here, I got the corner office, nice view. But for the most part, the chiefs are in their office. Okay. They're not out there in the engine room standing over the top of y'all, taking energy out of your day. And I see this happen all the time, man. Guys complain about the chief. Man. So, man, that must be horrible being in the same firehouse as the chief. He's not. He's not here, man. His office is downtown. The only time we see him is when he comes out here and wants his car washed. Well, if he's not in your firehouse, if he's physically not there, you got total control over your work environment. So take control. Don't worry about what the chief's doing. When the guys start to squawk, man, load up on the engine. Go out there, look at that target hazard. Load up on the rig. Go out there and throw some ladders, man. Go into that apartment complex and see what it's going to take to reach that far apartment building on the number 3 floor. There's so many things you can do in terms of taking ownership in your firehouse. I see this happen all the time, man. People complain, oh, yeah, and you see that stupid policy came out? I'd never do that, man. They ought to just deal with so and so. We know that's what caused that. Well, there's 2 things that go along with that. Number one is if you would never do that, why are you even worried about it? Number 2 is maybe the chief tried to do something about it, and what did HR tell him? Can't reprimand somebody for a policy that isn't there. So maybe that's why that policy came out. I never expected I'd have to write a policy about that. But in this day and age, you can bet that HR is always going to want to cover their butts. And as a chief, if you don't have a policy about something, you may very well have to write a policy to take action against people who would violate the policy. And you may very well have to write policy to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Because if somebody did it, what's stopping somebody else from doing it? Okay. Another thing that happens, and I never realized this until I was part of the faculty at an officer development program in Kansas City that was run by the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And one of the presenters was a psychiatrist, very smart individual, very, very smart individual, learned a lot from it. And one of the things that he said is that the human mind, in 75% of instances, is inclined to look at the negative of anyone's situation. And the way he explained it is this was a survival instinct from when we weren't on the top of the food chain. So we're always looking for that problem so we don't get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. Well, you have something going on at shift change, and yes, folks, what's going on? Hey, man, I just heard a shift change that some stupid thing is going to happen. Whatever it is, any type of example. We're going to paint the fire trucks purple and drive backwards to runs. So you ask people, well, where'd you hear that from? Well, I heard Frankie talking about it at shift change. Well, quite honestly, Frankie hasn't been right about anything for the last 10 years. Okay. But now all of a sudden, because we hear it and it's something negative, and our brains are naturally wired to accept the negative as a truth, we give this thing credence. So somebody's got to stand up and say, hey, man, that dude hasn't been right in 10 years, man. Don't worry about it. Hey, look, man, I don't have an order telling me to take the rig to the paint shop. I don't have an order saying we're going to drive backwards. Hey, look, if it happens, it happens. We'll deal with it then. But right now, it's nothing more than a rumor. So let's go about our business. And when any of these things happen, when that stupid policy comes out or somebody hears Frankie babbling on about something, I mean, does it take, does it grow legs in the day? Does it kind of take over the agenda that day in the firehouse? And a lot of times it does. A lot of times it will, unless we stop it, unless somebody stands up and says, hey, listen, man, don't worry about the stupid policy. Hey, listen, Frankie isn't right about anything. Hey, listen, let's just, I'm telling you, it works, man. Just load up on the fire engine and go out and do some fireman stuff. And when we get people in a good environment who stray a little bit when these things happen, we go back to doing fireman stuff, man, and they come right back to where we want them to be. And for that day, instead of focusing on the stupid policy or the stupid rumor, we're spending time getting ready for that next fire. And here are the perfect examples, man. Up until a couple months ago, over in New York City, there wasn't a fire department that dealt with more problems and issues than Houston. And this is District 68, my buddy Mo Davis. And this is District 8, downtown Houston, my buddy Clyde Gordon getting ready to retire in a couple weeks. Okay. When you walk into those firehouses, you don't hear about all the stuff that's going on. Okay. You hear guys talking about fires. I mean, I rode with Clyde for 24 hours and we made, the engine was making runs. I jumped on the engine for a little bit, made a couple runs with the engine, came back. That firehouse has got a Proby in it. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we were out in the bay pulling line, training that Proby. They weren't sitting around the kitchen table bitching about the mayor and bitching about this and bitching about that and bitching about something else. They were out in the bay doing fireman stuff, getting that Proby ready for that fire that he's going to go to sooner or later. Because between engine 1 and engine 8 downtown Houston, they're going to catch a fire sooner or later. And more than likely, it's going to be sooner than later. Okay. Even though they're downtown, everybody, people that know, Houston, district, that's just a high rise district. Well, the high rise is a big part of their district, but their district expands past the core of the city. And they got some gnarly places in their first due. So those folks are going to go to a fire. And the point of this is instead of sitting there and just getting themselves all consumed, which would be very easy to do because there were a lot of problems in Houston before the new mayor and the new chief took over. They just did some fireman stuff on a regular basis. So if you want to start bringing your team in line with where you really want it to be, I'm telling you, do fireman stuff, man. It works. I mean, if you look at these teams and these firehouses that are strong, solid, and productive, they're built on trust. So trust is a two-way street. If the firefighter looks at the officer, these are the things that firefighter needs to be able to say. Number one, the captain knows what he or she is doing. They're not going to get me killed. Okay. If you don't know what you're doing, people aren't going to trust you. If you don't trust each other, the fire ground ain't going to work. It's just that simple. There are officers, and I mean, I've worked with them before, man. They come in, throw their stuff on the rig, maybe. Okay. Sometimes they just leave it in the locker and wait for a run to come, and they go in the office. And the only time you see them is if you catch a runner, you ring a dinner bell. Other than that, man, they're in the office. And we all know what they're doing in there. They're in there, watching YouTube, playing around with TikTok, or watching TV. I mean, I used to watch Fox News all day long, and I'm not talking about politics because I won't talk about politics. What I'm saying is, why are you in your office all day long watching news when the firemen are out in the bay trying to figure out something to do? Get out there and get with your companies, train them, work with them, build those bonds of trust. Okay. They have genuine concern for me personally and professionally. So once again, I'm not saying you gotta, go to all the family barbecues, but it's not a bad thing to know the spouse's names. It's not a bad name. It's not a bad thing to know a little about the kids. The guy's got two daughters. They're playing travel soccer, man. That's a big thing, man. It's okay, and it's a good thing to kind of be in tune with the schedule. Hey, man, his daughters, they're on travel soccer, man. They're in the quarterfinals, man. Guy comes to work, man. Just, hey, man, how'd your daughter do? Hey, just little bits and pieces. I sat in a meeting one time, and battalion chief was sitting in the back of the room. We were going through this whole hose and nozzle package debate, excruciating conversations. So a young fireman stood up and said, "Hey, chief, you know, the NFPA standards say that the first two lines deployed at fire need to be able to generate 300 gallons per minute. Our hose and nozzle package is not able to do that. What do you think, chief? What do you think we should do?" And the battalion chief says, "Well, this is an NFPA bill. We've been fighting fire like this for the last 50 years, haven't killed anybody yet." Okay. So basically, and he prefaced this by saying, "I don't really care about what that standard says. This isn't an NFPA bill." So he tells the young firefighter, "I don't really care what you think. This is what we're going to do." So think about that. Is that young firefighter ever going to extend themselves for that chief? The other thing is, how embarrassing would it be to stand up in front of all your peers and have your boss tell you they don't care about what you think? There are very, very, very few nevers and always. But I will say that as a boss, never tell the people in your command you don't care about them, about what they think, about their ideas, whatever. There's plenty of ways to address that. Hey, listen, I don't agree with that. Hey, listen, we'll look into that. Hey, listen, I don't think that's going to work here. Hey, listen, there's budgetary issues that go along with this. But to make that blanket statement, I don't care, this isn't an NFPA bill, it's a bad move. Okay? They empower me to make decisions. Officers get paid to make decisions. But as firefighters, we got to teach them, teach the new officers, teach the up and coming officers how to make good decisions. We got to let people make decisions. We got to let people identify a problem, identify some solutions, and implement those solutions. Because if we don't do it when they're firefighters and we're close and we can give them a backstop and we can help them when they have problems, how the hell are they going to be successful when we promote them? When they're on their own, when they don't have the backstop, when they are the adult in the room, when they are in the eyes of their company, the subject matter experts. And we've never allowed them to make decisions before. We've never empowered them. So if we care about the future of the fire department, we need to make sure we empower people to make decisions. And then have a high level of tactical fitness. Because the firefighters say to themselves, "Hey, man, if I get in the jam, man, the captain, lieutenant, sergeant, whatever is the one who's going to pull me out." So if that person gets out of breath just walking across the engine room, they haven't seen their feet in the last 30 years because their belly gets in the way. And the grab bar on the rig is all bent out of shape from them pulling themselves up into the cab. Are the firefighters going to want to trust that guy? or, excuse me, or that woman. I don't think they will. Now, as I said, trust is a two-way street. So if I'm an officer looking at my firefighters, I want them to know how to do their job. Okay, just that simple. I'm here to help you. I'm here to identify gaps. I'm here to answer questions. But if you come to my firehouse as a certified firefighter, I expect you to know your job. And if you don't know your job, I expect you to put that on the table right away. Hey, listen, man, I'm weak with ladders. I'm weak with ventilation. Hey, I'm not very good. That makes me laugh. I hear the old guys, older guys bitching about the younger generation, the plus and minus screwdriver. Well, you know what? If they don't know, instead of sitting in the kitchen table bitching about these folks, why don't you get up and take them out to the toolbox for 20 minutes? Why don't you say to them, hey, look, man, there's an element of mechanical aptitude you just got to have on this job. So come on out to the toolbox with me and let me show you a couple. Hey, do you know the difference between these screwdrivers? Do you know how this works? Uh, you know, do you know how to use wrenches? Do you know the difference between a box wrench, a crescent wrench, and an open end wrench? Just ask some questions. Help these folks out to be proficient in their skills if there are weaknesses. Maintain a high level of tactical proficiency. And what I mean by high level of tactical proficiency is there's a real big difference, in my opinion, of going out behind the firehouse and throwing a ladder when it's 65 degrees out in your station uniform and being able to throw a ladder at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're on the 14th run of the day. It's 20 degrees out. There's, a driving wind. You got a working fire with reports of people trapped and you got people screaming at you. Just because you can do it out behind the firehouse does not necessarily mean you're going to be able to do it on the fire. So I want you to know how to do your job, and I want you to be able to do it in that tactical setting. Okay. I want you to understand your role at a fire. If we're first due, second due, third due. Now this comes from me and guideline driven organizations. And just as an example, the primary mission of the second due engine on a working structure fire in my agencies was to make sure the first line's working. That trumped everything else. The engine would get there, second due, and we had ways they would check in with the first due to make sure they're good. First due is good, they go about the next task in, our playbook. But everybody knew coming in what we were going to do. They didn't have to wait for me to give them instructions. When we got off of the rig, we moved as one, everybody knowing what our play was. Okay. So if I'm going to trust people, I got to have that built into it. Okay. They make good decisions. Okay. If you make lousy decisions in your personal life, can we expect you to automatically be a great decision maker when you pull into the firehouse? And the answer is absolutely not. And what you do, people know about. That's one thing about the fire service, man. You can't hide, folks. No. We had a guy, and the guys yell over to him, hey, man, the mechanic's here picking up your car. Now, this is a young guy living at home. He's a top paid fireman. He's making like $68,000 a year, living in New Jersey like 20 years ago. And the guy says, that's not a mechanic. I'm getting my car repossessed. It's like, really, man? You live at home, you're at top pay, and you got your car repossessed? Bad decisions. And when you look at this guy, that's all he ever did was make bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And he got to the point where he left the fire department. And quite honestly, I think he left the fire department before we fired him because he just couldn't make good decisions. And all of those guys who are sitting in that firehouse are saying, I'm going to trust this guy if we go to a run. Okay. I'm going to trust this guy when we're overhauling, when we're in somebody's house and we're overhauling a bedroom. I'm going to trust this guy. I mean, he sees money laying around, he's going to stick it in his pocket. then all of a sudden it's going to be the fire departments, right? They got to make good decisions. And then they want their officer, they want the officer to have a high level of tactical fitness too. Because if they get in a jam, it's the officer pulling them out. Just like if the officer gets in a jam, the firefighters are going to pull them out. So it's a two-way street, man. I talk about default posture. This is the way I want people to look at stuff. This is the way I want people who come to my firehouse to focus. And if I want to draw the good, strong, heavy hitting, aggressive firefighters, man, this is what our firehouse needs to be about. Number one, we're going to a fire today. Just that simple. We work in suburban America, and we may go months without going to a working fire based on vacation schedules and maybe 4 or 5 months. I was off the last working fire, man. We go, a 2 month drought, boom, all of a sudden we're out of fire. And the law of recency tells us what we do best is what we have done most recently. So if I've been going to medical runs and automatic fire alarms for the last 5 months, can I expect to really be proficient on a working fire? And the answer is no, unless in our default posture, in our method of daily operation, every day we're in the firehouse, we're saying, hey, man, get ready, man. We're going to the fire today, man. Let's make sure we're ready. Hey, man, are you good? Hey, are you good? Hey, let's do a drill today on whatever. Let's pull some line. Hey, listen, the last fire we went to, what did we have a hard time with? Well, it was real hard getting that ladder around that seaside of the building. Good. Let's practice some ladder carries. Let's do what we've got to do to make sure we're ready for that fire. And if the fire doesn't come, man, I'm gonna steal Jocko's line. I just say good. Good because it gives us one more day to get ready. Because we know that at some point in time, the fire department is going to go to a fire. So if we don't go to one today, good, man. I got one more day to get ready. Okay. Whatever we do, offensive, defensive, transition, whatever, we will default to an aggressive strategy. Now, the tactics we use are going to be different, but man, we're going to get after it. So many times when I hear guys going defensive, man, everything kind of slows down. Oh, we're going defensive. We'll say, we'll save the exposures. Oh, we're going defensive. We'll save it at the block of origin. Look, I'm not telling you to do anything stupid, but I will say this: if 50% of a building is involved, that tells me 50% of the building isn't involved. If the part of the building that isn't involved contains the records for a business, contains the computer server room, man, if we save that, that's significant. Because I will also say that U.S. Fire Administration says in the overwhelming majority, businesses that experience a significant fire loss do not repopulate in the jurisdiction where the loss occurred. They go down the road to the next township and they reestablish themselves. They take their insurance money, buy a new building, and they get 10-year tax abatements. Okay. We want to be aggressive. We want to be that agency that's going to stop the loss. We minimize our zero impact time, Scott Thompson talks about, from the time the air brake hits until we're making a difference. And the only way we can reduce that zero impact time, because in that time period I just described, we're not having any impact on that incident. So we want to reduce that. And the only way we can is by aggressively employing the tactics and strategy that the incident demands. We expect to find a victim in every fire, and we have a plan for if we do. So if you're riding an engine company, do you have a distinct plan for what you're going to do when the nozzle man comes across a victim? And this is one of those examples of we'll figure it out when we get there. It's just totally unacceptable. Okay? In my organizations, their plan was the nozzle person pushes past, they sound off victim, victim, victim. They push past the victim and they continue to flow water. They do not stop, because if it's a deep-seated fire that they are not actually putting solid water on solid fuel, If they shut the nozzle down to help drag the victim out, the fire is going to rebound and come right on it. So they hold their position and continue to flow water. The officer gets on the tactical channel, reports they have victim coming out wherever, and they start to move the victim out. If they need help, they call for additional resources to help them remove the victim. Because we worked in a setting where EMS was not organic to the fire department, it was a county service and only 3 ambulances in the entire county. We went to fires all the time without an EMS unit. And we had 3 critical burn center admissions in 2 years. So we went to fires and we dealt with fire victims. So what would happen is as soon as our chauffeurs heard that, they would grab EMS gear and they would go immediately to where the officer said the victim was coming out. So as soon as that victim came out, there was somebody there to provide patient care. And what we said in our guideline is that once we made contact with a fire victim, there would be a positive transfer of care until that victim was placed in an ambulance and they were leaving the scene. So, and I say this, man, I talk about this in my training program. You may not believe it, man, but it is very, very easy to build the training scars when you do search and rescue training. Bring the victim out, drop them on the ground, high five, we did a good job. Very, very easy if you don't go to a lot of fires and you don't do a lot of training. If that's the standard you train to, that's what's going to happen in real life. You can argue with me all day long. I mean, that's fine. I'll listen to what you have to say, but I know enough about training and I know enough about how the human mind works in high stress environments. And I know enough about training scores and how human beings revert to the level of their training, not to the level that they think they're going to perform to. That could very well happen. The other thing we talk about is when we find a victim, if we find their head and we're coming in from the door, that tells me there was a high likelihood that they were leaving the structure. If we find their feet, that tells me that there's a high likelihood that they were going into the structure. And I don't know what they were going in there for. Maybe they were going in there to grab a parakeet. Maybe they were going into the back bedroom because there's 2 kids back there. I don't really know. But because I don't know where I find that victim, I've got to mark that location because as soon as we possibly can, we need to extend the search beyond that point because there's an indication that there's something inside that structure beyond where we found the victim. Okay. And we just had these conversations and we start thinking about that. Yeah, all right. Hey, look, man, I got my box light, man. I can leave my box light there. Hey, I got a halogen. I can jam it in the wall. I can tell that next due company, hey, listen, man, go down the hall, go through the front door, make that left down the hallway, go to my box light. That's where we found this victim. That's where the search stopped. So now, instead of having to duplicate efforts, that second company can go in, make that left-hand turn, aggressively move down that hallway, find that box light, and start to extend the search from that point. And then we say if we find one, there will be more. Okay. One of the things that we make a big deal about in our training is when you find a victim, you need to do a quick sweep around the victim. Could have been an adult carrying 2 kids outside. They became overcome. They fell to the ground. They dropped their kids. How would we feel if we dragged that person out, didn't extend the search, and then through overhaul, we found 2 dead kids in the vicinity of where we drugged the adult out? Don't let that happen. If it's predictable, it's preventable. If we lay our policies and our operating guidelines and our training out to address these things, it won't happen. Okay. Every day in the firehouse is that opportunity to prepare for the worst fire of your career. Okay. So this is a 7-story high-rise, mid-rise building in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. They get a fire at 3 o'clock in the morning. Woman leaves that apartment, gets out in the hallway, leaves the door open. Smoke migrates into the hallway, contaminates the hallway. The woman in this apartment hears the smoke alarms going off. She goes to exit the apartment. She's forced back in because of the smoke in the hallway. So when ladder 24 pulls up, she's straddling this rail, getting ready to jump because the glass patio doors have failed. The door in this fire apartment is open to the common hallway. So now we got a tremendous flow path and we have wind driving the fire around that partition onto the balcony where this woman is. So the guys on the ladder say, hey, man, when we pulled up, she was straddling the rail. Man, she's getting ready to jump. And if we didn't take some action, we were going to stand there and watch that woman die. Okay. If we look at where the ladder is positioned and how close it is to the parked cars, the question begs to be asked, did they get lucky that night? And the answer is absolutely not. Because 24s was in that building all the time, morning, noon, and night. Faulty alarm systems, elevator malfunctions, EMS runs, leaking pipes, dewatering jobs, backfired the generator in the basement. They're in there all the time. And what they would do is as they were taken up at night, and look, man, I get it, man. You come off an EMS run at 3 o'clock in the morning, man. You want to go back to the firehouse. I'm not blaming you for that. I'm not arguing about that. But before they went back to the firehouse, they'd take 10 minutes real quick and set the aerial up so that the chauffeur knew where to spot the rig in relationship to the parking lot curb that would allow them to run the outriggers out without having to reposition the rig. All this went down because that company spent time preparing for the worst fire of their career. They'd sit around in the kitchen and they'd say, hey, what are we going to have to do? What do we have to do if we need to put the aerial in service to make an aerial rescue? And in all honesty, our agency did not have an operating guideline for that. That's something that we kind of looked past for whatever reason. But these guys in that firehouse sat down and they had a plan for when the parking brake hit. Everybody came off the rig and everybody knew exactly what they're going to do. Okay? There was no lost time. There was no confusion. They executed flawlessly, which allowed them to get up there and get that woman off of that balcony before she jumped. That is probably the worst fire of their career. It's probably the most intense situation that company as a group is going to face. Short of maybe having, a writ and a mayday. I don't know. I know that it was pretty significant. I know that their actions, executing the way that they did, saved that woman's life. So when you come into the firehouse, are you saying to yourself, what do we have to do to get ready for that worst fire of our career? And every time we go out the door, are we saying, this is going to be it, man? This is going to be, this is going to be the career fire. Talk about being all in. And people know this by our actions, not just our words. You can talk all day long, but you got to be able to back it up. Now, I put this picture up because I know all these guys in this picture. I've trained every one of those guys. I've fought fire with every one of those guys. You can take a look at that company, and the impression that I get is a squared away bunch of guys. Okay. The impression I get is they can take care of business. And what we want to do is send a message to everybody that we're all in. And I've found that the people that concentrate on the actions to support that don't have to say it much. Okay. Because their actions speak for themselves. And if your actions don't speak for yourself, then you're probably that guy sitting in the recliner with the blanket. So let people know that you can get the job done because you prove it, you show it, you just don't talk about it. I would say it all happens at the company level. Now, once again, there are a lot of things that I can do as the fire chief to set you up for success. But at the end of the day, the success, the success in the firehouse and the success on the fire ground come because of what companies are doing in the firehouse. And I would just be very, it's just that simple, man. I cannot take credit for what they're doing because they get it done. Okay. They're the ones riding the rig. Okay. They're the ones pulling the line. They're the ones doing CPR. They're the ones delivering medical care. They're the ones venting the roof. So, and this is the leadership. Understand that the most important person in the organization is that person riding the nozzle seat. So, as a fire chief, what I have to do is everything that I can to allow that person to be successful. And if I'm doing that, and then everything else is going to fall in line. It's not about being a solid company together or apart. And we have people come to the fire service that don't have any background in a team centered environment. They don't have any background in the fire service. They don't realize this. We have young people coming who are immature in the way they view the world and how they have interactions with people. Part of this is when I was a captain at the rescue, there were some companies in the fire department that just hated the rescue. I mean, it is what it is. They thought that they thought that we were prima donnas. They thought that we thought we were better than they were, and we didn't. We didn't talk like that. We didn't act like that. But some people have just got that notion about the heavy rescue. But I told my guys, listen, when you get detailed out to a firehouse, when you get called for overtime and people start pumping you for what it's like over here at the rescue, don't buy into it. Don't buy into it. Don't engage. Okay. If there are problems in this firehouse, we'll handle them. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But don't buy into it. And we see this happen with young people that don't have a real good, strong background in a team centered environment. They get called for overtime. Somebody says, hey, man, what's it like over there, 14s? It's okay, man, but the captain's a real asshole. And it's just two firefighters talking out there in the bay. Well, as soon as you say that, that dude's going to say, all right, I'll be right back, man. He's going to jump on the phone. He's going to start calling people. And within a half an hour, your boss is going to know that you're calling him an asshole in another firehouse. So just don't do it. Say, excuse me, stay solid, together or apart. Don't buy into it. Don't engage in it. Let it go. Don't let yourself get pulled into conversations that are eventually going to come back and do some damage. Okay? We take care of our business, and our business stays here. Okay? This is a squad company that I have. Here's the deal. I tell officers, listen, these are your guidelines. Okay, these are your guidelines. Illegal, immoral, unsafe, gross violation of department policy. If those things happen, I need to know about it immediately. Other than that, I want you to settle problems at the lowest level possible. I want you to settle your problems in the firehouse. I don't want to get a call about a big to do going on because of a couple cups in the dishwasher. I don't want to get a call because one platoon's all wrapped up at the other because they didn't order the toilet paper on supply day. Okay? If it's not one of the big four, illegal, immoral, unsafe, major violation of department policy, handle the problems in the firehouse and keep them in the firehouse. This goes back to what I just talked about, how we're a solid group together or apart. When we handle these issues, they stay in the firehouse. I mean, I'm friends with Tommy Gardner, who retired out of the FDNY. He was the command officer at Squad 8 out on Staten Island. And what Tommy taught me is when you sit down, when we sit down and have these issues or whatever, you know, we hammer things out, whatever it is, and we go around the room and we ask everybody, are you good? Are you good? Are you good? And if you say you're good, the problem's over with and we're not going to talk about it again. If we don't work this out to your satisfaction, when we go around the room and say, are you good? Then you say no. And then you put on the table why you said no. But we hammer this out. We deal with it here. It stays here. And when it's over, it's over. If we want to have that strong company, and if we want to bring good people into our firehouse, man, that's the way we got to act. Because good people aren't going to want to go into a gossip mill. Good people aren't going to want to go into a raving shitstorm. They don't want any part of that. They want to come to a firehouse and concentrate on being good firefighters. So we got to handle these issues, take care of business. The business stays here. Are you good? I'm good, boss. Are you good? I'm good, boss. I'm good with this. This is over with. We move on. You got, and I'm not saying do it exactly like that, but you've got to adopt a method that you can use to manage these issues in the team. And if you don't, sooner or later, the team is going to fracture and fall apart because the best team's going to have some conflict in it. The best team's going to have some personality issues. Best team is going to hit a rough time. What are you going to do? Have a method in play before you come to that. Because if you're trying to figure it out on the fly, it probably isn't going to go too good. We respect our officers' opinions. He or she respects ours. Respect and trust is a two-way street. You know? So I put that picture up there for a reason. That guy, his name is Mike Nelson. We call him Nelly. He retired last year as a senior man in our organization. And he spent his last 2 years at an engine. He spent 18 years at the squad company. He left the squad company as a senior guy there. That man was so well respected in the fire department. In a meeting, if he stood up, everybody stopped talking and they listened to every word that he said. Well, before he came on the job, he was on one of our paid duty crews. And he got himself sideways with me one night, big time. And I really lit him up. And I gave him a warning. I said, listen, man, you ever go down that road again, that'll be the last day you ever wear our uniform. I'm not playing. I'm going to give you one chance. And he goes, I got it. I got it. Never mentioned it again. I never had a bit of trouble with Nelly after that night. And on the day he retired, he called me in Florida and he said, hey, listen, Chief, and he still calls me Chief. He says, I respect you more than any other officer I've ever worked for because that night when I crossed the line and you gave me my warning, you never mentioned it after that. Didn't kid around with him, didn't joke about it, didn't talk to anybody else about it. That was between me and him, a boss and a firefighter. And I told him exactly what he did. I told him what he did wrong. I told him what good behavior looks like. And I told him what would happen if he ever did it again. And I stayed true to my word. He stayed true to his word. And to this day, to this very day, he and I are close, close friends because of the respect that we have for each other. He respected me as the boss, calling him out. I mean, I could have terminated him if I wanted to. I mean, he was just a part-time duty crew guy. I could have said, "This is it, you're done." But I saw a lot of potential in him, so I wanted to give him that second chance. And he respected me as the boss doing that. And because he fixed that problem because he never engaged again. I respected him because if I would come in the firehouse 2 or 3, 5 years later and joke around about it, that's not respecting him. Because when we had this conversation, it was serious, it was intense. And when people are on the receiving end of that type of conversation from their boss, it stings. I know because I've been in his shoes. I've had to sit there for that conversation because I stepped over the mark. So that's something that stings. And quite honestly, that's always going to sting. And if we think that, it's over with now, a couple years down, we can joke about it, we can laugh about it. I think you're wrong. I think you don't joke about it. I think you don't laugh about it. I think that you monitor the situation, and as long as those behaviors correct themselves, you never bring it up again. Now, if those behaviors happen again, that's a different story. But if you really want to build that trust and that respect that you need to have to be successful in the fire department, this is a lesson that I think you should learn. Respect each other. Okay. Respect each other's opinions. Okay. Make sure that you don't cross the line. And then think about where that line is before you say something. And I've not always been perfect when it comes to doing that. Okay. And I'm none of this stuff that I'm talking about, I'm saying I'm perfect and I do it all the time the right way. I mean, we all are human beings and we all stumble. But I tell you this story and I give you this example as something to remember, as something to put in the back of your mind. Because this, if you don't handle these situations correctly, you can really contaminate a relationship. And thank God, knock on wood, that I had the relationship, that I have the relationship right now that I do, because at the end of the day, Nellie's turned out to be an awesome firefighter, a great asset to our fire department, a good friend, and I'm just lucky that our paths have crossed. But think about how you manage those type of situations. We treat each other well. It's just that simple. I mean, this is Cherry Hill at our squad company. Dinner time is a big deal. I mean, you know, we do so many things when it comes to dinner time. Somebody cooks, somebody's going to set the table. Okay. They're going to cook something that everybody agrees on. This is the squad company, man. These guys get busy. I mean, they get busy on runs. They maintain all our gas meters. They're a hazmat. They're weapons of mass destruction. They're backup to the rescue company. They're a busy local. They're on multiple task force assignments going out of town. They go to Watns side. They go to Barrington. They go to Belmore. They go to Haddonfield. They're busy, but they make time to sit down and eat a meal together. And if these three guys are out in the bay doing, maintenance work and, working on the rig and whatever, and the dude's in the kitchen cooking, man, he's going to cook, he's going to set the table, and then he's going to call everybody in and say, hey, man, dinner's ready. And those guys are going to walk in and everything's on the table ready to go because we treat each other well. And what's wrong with treating each other well? I mean, why do we have this notion in our mind that, we can treat people less than well just because they're the new guy, just because I don't like them? If we're going to build the team, this goes back to camaraderie in our culture. We treat each other well. We need to get along with each other. We go out of our way to do nice things because positive energy begets positive energy. I mean, I knew some of my firehouses. As soon as I pulled in the parking lot, I knew who was working because you can just feel it. It's like, oh, it's going to be one of them. So you walk into the firehouse and everybody's scattered. They're in different rooms. Nobody's talking to each other. I mean, really, the only time they get together is when the bells hit. It's like, that's not an effective unit on the fire ground. Look at a couple of things here. Once again, this is Station 8 down in Houston. Okay. It's a big firehouse, man. They've got the chief's buggy, 2 engines. They got an ambulance. They got a pickup squad truck, and they got the citywide command unit. Big, big command unit. Sunday morning, everything gets pulled out. Everything gets washed. Wash out the bays. It's a busy, busy day, man. So my buddy Clyde Gordon, highest ranking guy in that firehouse, is out back cooking breakfast. And this is what he does. They're doing all the work. He cooks he cooks breakfast. And when it's time, when all the work is over with, they all sit down, they all enjoy a meal together. Okay? Treating each other well. Highest ranking guy in the firehouse. He could sit in his office and just wait to be served. The big cities are like that, man. That's just the way some chiefs operate. Not him. And it shows in that firehouse. It shows in the way these guys operate. It shows in the fact that at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when it's hot, they're pulling hose with their probe. Okay. My buddy Sparrow, Big John out in Colorado, man, leaves his stuff in the dryer, forgets about it, comes walking in, somebody's folded his t-shirts. Yeah, I know, I'm not anybody's maid, blah, blah, it goes on, whatever. How long did it take to fold 3 t-shirts? Now John's saying, man, I owe somebody a favor. Right? And John asked, who did this? Nobody fessed up. Don't worry about this. It's good. That's the way that firehouse is. I mean, when I was a battalion chief, I was working on overtime. I had my sheets in the washer, and it was still in the wash cycle. Somebody stopped the washing machine, took my wet sheets out, threw them on top of the dryer so they could wash their clothes. So I treat each other well. Okay. If we want to build that strong team, treat each other well. Okay. Don't diminish your shortcomings by focusing on the shortcomings of someone else. Okay. I was brought into the city as a fire chief to make some changes. Well, I started making some changes, and of course, I had a couple of people that didn't like the changes. One of them was a battalion chief, ended up being, my arch enemy in that fire department. Whatever, that's his issue. We go to a fire one time, and the battalion chiefs were still on the rigs, and that's a whole story for a whole other day. But we go to a fire. I get in right at I arrive just as that engine arrives. So I tell the battalion chief, get in there, pack on, get inside. Division supervisor, give me nature and conditions, and what we need to do to cut this fire off. And I stood there and I watched this guy fumble around with an air pack. I have seen students in a Fire One Academy get their air pack on faster than this guy. So my point is, you can spend all your time criticizing everybody else, but that doesn't do anything about making the fire ground go good. I mean, if you want to criticize somebody else, man, that's on you. Okay. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. But what I am going to tell you is, as long as you're riding a fire engine, there's an expectation of performance that your community has for you. And you don't have a right to criticize anybody if you can't perform up to the standards that are set by our profession and are the expectations of the community. And when we say that, when that is what drives our team, we attract good people to the team. And it's just that simple. We take ownership for the development of our members. So this is a buddy out in California sends me a picture. This guy is a pro. One of the things that he has to do is deliver a 2-hour class to all the members of his company on a topic that he is assigned. He doesn't get to choose. So they assign him to do a 2-hour class on positive pressure ventilation. Well, this is the senior man in the firehouse. So the probie gets this assignment. Hey, listen, next month on the 15th is your class presentation day. You're going to go over positive pressure ventilation with the firehouse. So the senior man starts to mentor this guy. The senior man starts to spend a little bit of time with him, going over everything, making sure he's got everything right. The senior man says, hey, listen, You got to give your presentation 2 weeks from now. You know what? When we come back to work, I want you to give me the presentation so you have a chance to rehearse it and so I can give you some feedback. So he does, and there's a few stumbling blocks. So he helps the guy out. By the time this guy gives this presentation, it's spot on, man. It is perfect because that entire company took ownership for the development of their member. They took the time to make sure this guy was squared away. It's not, hey, here's your topic, good luck. And you know what? When the class is over, they all go up to him and say, hey, man, good job, man. Hey, man, we enjoyed that. Hey, man. The captain tells him, hey, I can see you put in some work, man. Congratulations. What's wrong with giving people a win? There's some fire departments out there, they treat their people like crap. They kick them down. They put them underneath the foam. I mean, I took over a fire department one time where they used to hide paper clips behind the furniture to make sure the probies were moving the couch when they vacuum. It's like, what are we doing? What type of games are we playing? Let's train our people. Let's set them up for success. And then when they succeed, give them a little positive feedback. Let them feel good about themselves. There's three elements of the human mind that function in high threat, high stress situations: the conscious, the subconscious, and the self image. So they all interact with each other. Well, if we're beating our people down, if we're treating them like crap, their self image is going to take a hit. And then we wonder why they fumble around on the fire ground. Well, they fumble around on the fire ground because we've kicked them so many times in the firehouse, their self image falls off. And that gets in the way of their performance. So if we are honest about whose fault the poor performance is, it really isn't the probie's fault. It's the people in the firehouse and the way the people in the firehouse have treated that guy. My buddy Kyle Romagus, I just spent the weekend with Kyle. Well, Kyle had a hardcover copy of the Book of Andy. It was in his firehouse. He'd get a new probie come to him and he'd give him the book. Say, hey, man, I want you to take some time to read this. And when you get all the way through it, let's sit down and talk about it, man. Let's talk about the lessons that Andy Fredericks have taught you. So when this is all over and done with, Kyle has the guy sign the book and date it. The book's still in the firehouse. So this is a couple years down the road. So now you can go in that book and you can see the different probies that were assigned to Kyle, the different probies that were signed at a firehouse, signed and dated. If they continue to do that 20 years from now, the chief of that fire department could very well be a signature of that book. We're talking about building legacy. We're talking about telling people there's a future for you here if you're willing to do the work. Those things take time to really come to fruition, but we can start them right here and right now. So take ownership for the development of our probies and start doing something about it. Put something in place. I mean, I'm not telling you to go out and buy a hardcover copy of the Book of Andy. Do anything. Take a picture of the probie on his first day. Have him come in the firehouse. Have him put his Class B uniform on. Take him out to the rig. Set him up. Take a nice picture of him. Put it up on the wall. Now, all of a sudden, 10 years down the road, you got pictures of all the probies that came through the firehouse. Maybe some of them didn't work out. Maybe some of them you kind of laugh at. But maybe some of the rising stars in your fire department are hanging on that wall in their first day probie picture at Engine 14. Take ownership of your people. These companies, these hard driving companies, understand that training is an essential part of their job. The responsibility of training cannot be passed on to someone else. And cookie cutter check the box training has little, if any, value. Okay. So if you look at this picture, this is an example of ladder splicing that we did, they still do, in the academy at Sunrise Beach. Is that dangerous? Well, yeah, sure it is. Read the inside label of your turnout coat. This is a dangerous business. Why do we do ladder splicing? Well, along the shores of the Lake of the Ozarks, we have condominium pro multiple condominium buildings that are 2 and 3 stories in the front and 3 and 4 stories in the rear, because the slope of the land drops off drastically to the shoreline of the lake. So we can't get an aerial ladder back. We can't get aerial apparatus back there. But we have 4-story apartments. So what happens if we get somebody trapped on the 4th floor and we can't get the aerial back there? And all we have are ground levels. The 35-foot on the quint won't reach some of these windows. So what are we going to do? Just let the people die? Or are we going to train our people to a very high level to execute a dangerous task in a dangerous situation aimed at saving someone's life? So that's why training is an essential part of our job. Figure out what it is that we have to do, figure out some of the risk and the hazards we're exposed to, and figure out ways to work around it, and then train our people how to do it. Okay? Companies know sets and reps on a regular basis is the only way to master a skill. And excellence in the basics is a necessary ingredient for fireground success. So we had Woods door in our firehouse. My buddy in Kansas City sent me this picture. So we built a set of stairs into our Woods door. So what we would do is we would set this up as an inward swinging door, and we would just work with our folks. Okay. They would just go down there, force the door, and their station close. Then they put their turnout gear on, and they'd force the door. Multiple reps. Then they put their SCBA on. Then they put their SCBA on, breathing air. Then finally, over the course of days and weeks, we get them to the point, full turnout gear, on air, vision excluded. They could get in that stairwell and they could force that door without any real big problems. Now, I've been gone for a long time, and I can't guarantee you what they're doing today. But I can tell you that when I was there, a Sunrise Beach firefighter in full gear, breathing air with vision excluded, could get in that stairwell and force that door, because that was one of our standards. And we understood that excellence in the basics is a necessary ingredient for fireground success. And basics is forcing a door. So if we ramp that game up a little bit, we included, we raised the level of difficulty. We included some stress, and we did these evolutions over and over and over and over again. Could we get to the point where our people were very successful in these environments? And the answer is yes. You can argue with it all day long, but like I said, I know for a fact our folks could do that, beyond a doubt. Try everybody's in, right? I don't have it up there. Just wanted to make sure everybody was in. This is the gold standard right here. Tough, competent firefighters able to operate at an extremely high level, challenging, dangerous environments. I want you to look at this picture. This guy is at the top of a 24-foot extension ladder, hanging onto the side of the building for balance. And that woman's probably making the most difficult decision of her life. She keeps her baby with her and they die. Or she looks out the window and she drops her baby to a stranger. And the only reason why she does that is she looks down and she sees a firefighter. When she does that, you think she says, "Hey, bro, have you been in the gym today? Hey, man, when's the last time you've been on a ladder? Hey, man, how comfortable do you feel with that air pack on your back? Can you catch?" She sees a firefighter and she drops her kid to him. Okay. I don't think there's there's not a fire department I've been to delivering this program that does not have a 2-story and or a 3-story building in their response district, either first due, second due, or third. So what you're looking at in this picture is your fire. And I would say this is the gold standard. If you have full confidence that every member of your fire department can execute to the level that person is doing, that's awesome. Congratulations. Maintain what you have. If there is any doubt about the members of your department being able to execute at that level, you just identified a gap. So go home, figure out how you're going to plug that gap. Figure out how you're going to get those weak performers from where they are to where they need to be. Because in this particular instance, this woman needs that firefighter to be able to do this. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no timeouts. There's no mulligans. There's no easy buttons. This is what needs to be done by the fire department. And your training must produce people who are capable of doing this. I mean, I say it all the time, man. Target Solutions is very good for what it was designed to do. Target Solutions was not designed to develop tough, competent firefighters who are able to operate at extremely high level proficiency in challenging, dangerous environments. That's not what Target Solutions does. And if that's the basis of your training program, I hope that you look at this picture and that statement and think about the direction your department will take in terms of training tomorrow and into the future. You know, where do we start? Well, as I said, Chief Thompson's a good friend of mine. The colony that has identified the big five critical tasks that a colony firefighter must be able to execute at a high level of proficiency. They spend 90 days every year going back over these tasks. Okay. R10 is about getting everybody in our firehouse together, give them something to write with, say, hey, man, make a list of the 10 things this company needs to be really, really good at. So if you're not riding a truck, you probably don't have to worry about a 35-foot extension line. If you're way out in the country and everything that you're doing is mobile water supply, houses, trailers, and barns, you probably don't have to do a whole bunch of high-rise training. Okay. Identify what it is that your company needs to be good at. So then when you take all these papers in, you start looking at them, you're going to find common tasks amongst several of the lists. So now you have laid the groundwork for your company training program. And what's good about this is it's not the captain's training program, it's the company's. Because, man, these things are on 3 different lists here. Y'all, the members of the company, are telling me as the captain, these are the important things that we need to be able to train on. So that's where we start. The firehouse understands that a hard workout does talent, and talent doesn't want to work hard. You know, just that simple. This is our functional fitness Friday in our recruit school. Every Friday, instead of doing conventional PT, everybody in gear, air packs, work cycles, dragging tires, beating the tire with the sledgehammer, throwing ladders, climbing the drill tower. What was really cool is that I used to go out there and do it with them. So did the assistant chief. And some of the on-duty companies would come up and they would get involved with it. And all of a sudden, the fire department earned the reputation of a couple of things: tough, hard training and physical fitness. You know, you want to describe a Sunrise Beach firefighter, you just described it. Tough, hard training, and they were physically fit. And anything less wasn't accepted. But that's because we embraced hard work out does talent when talent doesn't want to work hard. You know, we had some talented people come. You know, we had some smart people come. We had some people with a whole bunch of certifications, but in the long run, they didn't last because all that stuff only goes so far. And what bridges the gap from that to tactical excellence is the willingness to work hard. Talk about owning our local. You know, we handle the runs. That was a big thing, man. You know, I was all about us handling the runs. Okay. If we needed mutual aid, that's fine, man. That's okay. But if we can make the run, let's make the run. So my buddy Mo Davis tells this story all the time, man. They used to go down. They used to go to an elderly woman. She lived by herself all the time. Fell out of the chair, man. They'd go and pick her up. So Mo talked to her one time. He said, "Hey, listen, why don't you give us a key? We'll go make it. We'll hide it underneath the flower pot so that we don't have to force your door open." And they did. And every time the run came in, they would make themselves available to go down there and use the key to get into this woman's house. Because let's think about that. We're on a run, we get real busy out at just send engine 20. Well, engine 20 doesn't know about the key. So engine 20 gets there, they force the door. Well, Mrs. Smith doesn't have anybody to call to help her get up into her chair. Who the hell is she going to call to fix her door? Okay. They knew the local, they knew the people, they knew there was a key to the back door underneath the flower pot. So they would handle those runs. And Mo would tell me if they were just coming off of a run, man, they'd put themselves, if they got something on the MDT for that address, they'd put themselves back in service and they'd make the run. And it didn't matter how tired they were, it didn't matter whatever, they did not turf the call off to somebody else. And that was, and that was me. That's what I told my guys. Listen, man, this is our local, man. We own it. I had a key that would take me to the roof of an 18-story high rise in Cherry Hill. And I used to take my acting battalion chiefs up there where you could stand on top of that building and look out all across the city and see just about everything. You could see the city, you could see all the high schools, the hospital, you could see the Jersey Turnpike, you could see the high-speed train line that ran through our city. You could see all that stuff. And I used to tell my acting battalion chiefs, man, when I'm off, this is your city. When I'm off, anything happens in this city, it's on your shoulders. You need to be able to handle these runs. So when I'm coaching you, when I'm mentoring you, when I'm training you, when I'm giving you assignments to get you ready for that day, I want you to look around and think about all the things that can happen in this city. And if I'm not here, if I'm on vacation, that's your run. So you need to make sure you can handle the run. You need to own this entire city because it is your city, okay? At least for that 24 hours. And once again, my buddy says, Mo, he says, we are the watchers. People go to sleep at night thinking if anything bad happens, the fire department's going to come fix their problems. Okay? That's what they expect. How prepared are you to do that? Are you ready to live up to that? Talk about the kitchen table, man. Best seat in the house. But just understand that your seat is earned. You never give it away. No rank, there's only respect. I would not sit at most times I would not sit at the kitchen table unless I was in a blue t-shirt. Everybody knew I was the chief. I didn't need to sit there with my gold badge flaunting in front of everybody. I want guys to open up. I mean, as my buddy Shannon Stone says, I need them to tell me the things that I need to hear that I probably don't want to hear. Well, it's going to be awful hard for a young fireman to say that if I'm sitting there with a gold badge and 5 trumpets on my collar. Honesty is required all around the board. I'm going to be honest with them. They need to be honest with me. They need to tell me those things that I really need to hear. Get over yourself, man. We're all in this together. It's a team sport. No one person's got all the answers. So don't think that you do because you don't. Everyone has a voice. Everyone's worth listening to. Okay? That new person that just comes to your firehouse, man, they're not invested. You know, we're doing stuff because that's the way we've always done it. Okay. That's just kind of the way it is. We've always done it that way. When a new person comes into the firehouse and he starts looking around, he says, "Hey man, why are we doing this instead of that?" Perfect example. With our first out rig we had a 4-bay station. Our first out rig was parked at the fourth bay. just because that's the way it always was, man. We didn't think anything about it. We get a run, we jump up, run across the bay, jump in the rig, off we go. New person came into the firehouse and said, "Hey, man, why isn't the first out rig the closest to the lounge in the bunker?" It's like, that's a stroke of genius. New people should be given a voice because they could very well come up with a good idea. And I say this, man, no phones, no devices. Hey, if there's an emergency at home, that's fine. But other than that, no phones, no devices for an hour. We're just going to sit here. We're going to talk about fires. We're going to talk about lessons learned. And I've said this all over the country, and some people have done it, and they'll call me in a couple months and say, "Hey, Chief, you won't believe this, man. We're sitting around the table for 3 hours now, man. It's awesome. And you guys, they leave your phones in the bunk room. They don't really care about it, man. We've never gotten along so well, man. We're learning so much. Hey, in the summertime, we're sitting on the front bumper of the rig with the doors open, man. It's awesome. We love it. Go ahead, try it. See if you get the same response. If you're bringing good people to your team, I guarantee you will. Talk about this a lot. It's a firehouse, man. You spend a third of your life there. You know, furniture out in the engine room, man. I loved it, man. Guys would go out, they'd find furniture, they go out, on garbage day, man, they'd pick furniture up, they'd come back and clean it, they put it in the back of the engine room, got a TV up there. It's like when they're spending time out in the engine room, guess what? They're probably talking about fire stuff. That's an okay thing. All our companies had patches. I just told them, I just want to see the patch. I approve it. If I approve it, man, we'll buy the decals to put on the side of the rig. You guys pay for the patches. You can put them on your Class A uniforms. Uh, build a new firehouse guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, listen, I got a bunch of flagstone left over from a project. Uh, I'll donate flagstone. The firehouse, everybody will pitch in. We'll buy the mulch and plants. We just, will you buy the garden wall, the block wall?" Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll find the money. So we did that, man. 6 months from that, 6 months later, best looking firehouse in the district because they had pride because it was their house. Okay. We understand that to win the fight, we must be a cohesive team. We got to kind of let that other stuff go by. This is camaraderie. This is being honest with people. This is airing our issues on the table and then going around the table saying, "Are you good? Are you good? We're good. We move on." We hold each other accountable. You know, I make a big deal. I've always made a big deal about tactical fitness. So as a fire chief, if I'm making a big deal about it, then maybe every once in a while I kind of got to get out there, not to try to show off, because quite honestly, I'm an older guy, man. There's always somebody stronger than me, always somebody faster than me. But I'd get out there in the morning. I'd do some PT with the companies. I'd do some PT on my own. But we all held each other accountable. I mean, I said that to be part of this organization, we expect a level of physical fitness. So if I'm going to expect that from the people in my command, I guess I got to get out there and get with it too. We understand that actions have consequences. Okay. Teams function like this. They understand that actions do have consequences. So when our probies came in on orientation night, we gave them the guideline and told them, "Hey, listen, this is now a member of your class. Don't leave anybody behind. Somebody stays with the guideline at all times." Just that simple. Anybody have any questions? Nobody has any questions. 3 days into recruit school, they bring the guide on into. So guess what we found sitting out in the park? I said, "Okay." And we knew it was going to happen. Go get Big Mo. So Big Mo is a 5-foot section of telephone pole that's got pieces of rope. And we drilled holes through the telephone pole, run some rope through it. So now we take the guide on away from them. And now they have a new member of the class called Big Mo. So everywhere they go, Big Mo goes with them. So when they come into the classroom, Big Mo's got a name tag. We put it on the desk. Big Mo's, they put him up in a chair. Big Mo goes to lunch with them. And when they get done doing PT, Big Mo sits out in the hallway with one of the other recruits while the others are in the shower room. They get out, they take turns Everywhere they go, they lug that telephone pole around. And they do this for like 3 days because, actions have consequences. All teams need to adopt the mindset of actions have consequences. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. If I give you my expectations and you're a member of my team and you don't live up to my expectations after I've explained them to you, there's going to be a consequence. That's all there is to it. Now, people look at me and say, oh, that's hazing, that's harassment, that's, okay, whatever. So you go to fire, you come into work, you throw your gear on the rig, and you forget your gloves in your locker. So 20 minutes after shift change, you got a 3-person engine company, you get dispatched to a working house fire 2 blocks away from your firehouse with people trapped. As a part of a 3-person engine company, you show up and you don't have your gloves. Oh, I forgot them. Yeah. Okay. Actions have consequences. That consequence of your action could very well delay getting that line in that house. And the delay in getting that line in position could cost somebody their life. This is a serious business. That's why we do these things. That's why our teams understand that actions have consequences. And good teams understand they roll with the punches, man, because sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. Sometimes things go exactly the way you want. Sometimes, you know, sometimes the bear gets you. So after lugging Big Mo around for 3 days, we bring him outside. There's the guide on. Have the class go get it. Go get your gear on, air packs, breathing air. Have the class go up, retrieve your guide on, bring it down to the ground. The entire class, including Big Mo. So the 5 people in the class have got to move that telephone pole from the ground to the roof of a 4-story training tower. They got to hold it there so I can see it. So we bring them on down. They get down on the ground. As soon as they get down on the ground, we take Big Mo away from them. The training staff takes care of them. We put Big Mo back where he belongs. We give them their guide on back. And I tell them, actions have consequences, folks. And that's all I say, go secure your gear. So 2 things I'll say. Number one is through the rest of the academy, do you ever think they left a guide on laying around? And the answer is no. Number two is as they're walking back to the locker room, they're kind of joking, they're really careful about what they say. But I overhear them, they joke around a little bit. That struggle of moving Big Mo to the top of that tower and down proved to them that they can get stuff done. Prove to them that if they just roll with the punches and they stay in the game, in the long run, they can win. And these are important lessons that I think we need to teach each other to be successful in the fire service. It's quite simple. We surround ourselves with good people. We know who the good people are. We know who they aren't. Here's the thing about the strong, heavy hitting firefighters in your fire department. They are just sitting there waiting for somebody to come ask them a question. They're just sitting there waiting for somebody to say, hey, man, you're pretty sharp when it comes to doing whatever, man. Can you teach me? Because they will. And that's what makes them good people. So surround yourself with good people. Ask yourself, man, if I'm in the worst fire I'm ever going to go to, who are the 5 people that I want with me? And when you identify those people, if you start to think about it, you're going to identify the traits and the characteristics and the attributes that those people have that make you say they are the ones you want with you on that bad night. So now, quite honestly, you got a roadmap. Now you know what it is that you need to work on to be like them. Now you know what makes them the standout firefighters, what makes them the good people. Get out of your bubble, man. Okay. This is not about me and all the people I know. Okay. But that's DJ Stone, that's Anthony Roulette, Kevin Picard. That's me and Chief Lee from the FDNY standing on Chief Isaacson's dock. It's me and Chief uh, Carl Romagus, Todd Edwards, Basil Abraham, Shannon Stone, Corley, and Amanda Moore in my backyard. That's me and Clyde Gordon. This isn't about the people that I know. Okay. And hey, look at me. What I am saying is all those people are out there. And if you get out of your bubble, okay, if you go to conferences, if you go to seminars, if you start to circulate, at some point in time, you're going to run into people who have got a lot to offer. And all you got to do is ask them a question. And every person in this picture will spend however much time they need to help you, to give you advice, to answer your questions, to help you position yourself to be successful in your career. They're out there, man. But you know what? They're not going to drop into your city. Every once in a while, we just got to take responsibility for our own development. And we got to go out and put ourselves in a position where we can meet these people, where we can ask them the questions that we have. You know, this is our special operations team. Okay. Good teams are made up of good teammates. And what this is all about is if you mess with any one person in this picture, okay, and I'm not saying, I'm not talking about, we'll take you outside, we'll go a couple rounds with a baseball bat. I'm saying if you mess with any of these people in any way, shape, or form, you're going to answer to all of them, okay? Because that is our special operations team. And as a team, they're just that tight. So that's what good teams are all about. Good players come to good teams because they know the team will always have their back. And the most important thing, man, is that I was scared, but I knew you would come for me. There's no doubt in my mind, no matter what I get into, if I go back to these guys here, whatever I get into, when I was on that job, whatever, man, I knew that if I got in a jam, those guys were coming. And that's just the way that we work. Well, what type of environment do you have in your firehouse? Do you have those old crusty guys that just bark at people all day long? Do you have those people in your firehouse that just aren't tactically proficient? Do you have those people in your firehouse that's all about do what I say, not what I do? And at the end of the day, when you go to this fire, what are the people in that company going to think about? Are they going to think about executing the mission? Or are they going to think about, man, I need to watch my back because these other guys don't have mine? That this fire, unauthorized additions in the back of this restaurant, this fire came in as investigate smoke, saying engine and ladder to that. This picture is 20 minutes into that job. Okay. Suburban America, man, things happen all the time. Okay. And we got to understand that what we do in the firehouse drastically impacts our ability to operate on fire. Now I'll close this out and tell a quick story. Like I said, my buddy Scott Thompson, Pete Lund is a legendary figure in the New York City Fire Department. Retired out as a lieutenant at Rescue 3. 2-3 years after he retired, he was killed in a house fire in Long Island. He was a volunteer firefighter, had a heart attack and died. To this day, he's a legendary figure. If you go to the New York City Fire Department, say the name Pete Lund, people will know who you're talking about. So Chief Thompson used to go to New York City and buff at Rescue 3, and he knew Pete. And one day they're sitting in the kitchen, and Scott looks at Pete and says, "Hey, man, you guys have really got it going on here, man. This is some really good thing, man. You got the people, you got the resource, you got it all." And Pete Lund looked at Scott Thompson. He says, "There's nothing stopping you from being every bit as good as a New York City firefighter. It's just a matter of how hard you're willing to work, and it may look a little bit different." So with that being said, I thank you for your time. I think that's a very true point that it just depends on us and how much work we're willing to do, how hard we're willing to push, how much we're willing to invest. My friend Danny Murphy's retired out of Rescue 2, and Danny just said, leave the job better than you found it. So with that being said, my contact information, please feel free to reach out if there's anything that I can do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll just leave this open for a little bit. If anybody has any questions, please feel free. All right. Anybody with any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. Everything good, Steve?
Great, man. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Chief, all good?
Chief, thank you very much. I thought it was an excellent presentation. You definitely gave us, some things to think about, and I think we're a firehouse with a lot of change right now, and we're definitely transitioning to, just putting in the work every day to try to be better, a little bit better every day to get to that end goal. So I think a lot of your topics really hit home, and we really appreciate you doing this for us. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. When you're in the midst of those transitions, I always tell everybody, man, it's so hard. It takes a long time to turn the aircraft carrier around. So just take it one day at a time and just play the long game, man. Just play the long game. Where do we want to be 2 years from now? Okay. That's the end state. Now, what are the little things that we can start doing now to get us there? That end state has 30 different things to it. Okay, so let's identify them and let's start working on one. And positive energy begets positive energy. I mean, we get a couple wins under our belt, and before we know it, it's a snowball rolling downhill. As leaders, all we got to do, in my opinion, is define what the end state is, what are the left and right boundaries, and then get out of the way. And if we move through this, like I said, the good people rise up and they make things happen. So I wish you all the luck in the world. And if there's anything that I can do, anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Chief. I really appreciate it, and thank you for doing this for our organization. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Absolutely, my pleasure. If nobody else has anything, anybody else?
So, Chief, I do have one thing.
Shoot.
And you kind of hit on it already, but what I want to ask is, in your opinion, how important is it to get outside of your four walls? Like you hit on, like there's always this is the way we've always done it, but how important, like in your opinion, do you need to get that outside opinion, that other perspective of how to do things?
Oh, I think it's key. I think it's absolutely key. I mean, if you go back to the slide where I put everybody's picture up, okay, nobody in that picture is just living in their little bubble. Okay, all the people in that picture are traveling. They're getting input from other folks. I mean, every one of us, our programs change every time we do them based on what we hear from other people, based on the feedback that we get, based on the things that we see. So, in my opinion, strictly in my opinion, the program that you looked at tonight is better than it was 2 years ago. And it's better tonight than it was 2 years ago because of all the interactions I've had in the last 2 years, of all the conversations I've had, of all the things that I've seen in the last 2 years. So if we're really gonna, if we're gonna look to be the best version of ourselves, I think there's so many people out there that can add to that. And the only way we can get those pieces is by getting out there. So as a chief, I always encourage outside training. As a chief, I did everything that I could to facilitate sending guys. It's just so important. And then, the other thing is, I mean, so guys are going to come back with a million ideas. It's like, all right, whatever. Here's the budget. This is what we can do. Okay. We'll figure out something. But then guys are going to go out and you're going to see other places. They're like, man, thank God I'm not there. And they're going to come back and they're going to be thankful for what they have, because no matter where you are, no matter where your organization is, you're better off than some places. And sometimes you can say that and it doesn't resonate. But when people go out and see it, they go, wait a minute. Maybe the old man ain't that bad after all. I mean, I heard stories from these guys. I went to this seminar, man. I heard stories from these guys. It's like, thank God I don't work for that cheap. So these are all little things that come from that outside experience. So, just my thought. I mean, one of the things that I did, as a chief, to make it easier, I just gave the guys per diem. When they went, I didn't do any of that, receipts and, tally things up or whatever, man. I just gave them per diem. I went on the federal website, GSA, and, wherever I was going to send them, whatever the per diem was. And I figured it out, if the guys, the travel day is different. And as sometimes it's a pain in the ass, but I just said, boom, here it is. You're going to be gone for 3 days in South Dakota. Here's the per diem rate. Cut them the check, whatever. And I didn't chase down. Now, I was able to write a policy that allowed me to do that because I had a board of directors. But I explained to them, I said, listen, these guys are going out, they're bringing receipts back. Man, we're spending 2-3 staff hours going over receipts for meals. It's like, just give them the per diem rate and just let it go. And the board said, well, is it going to make your job easier, chief? I go, absolutely. They go, all right, just write the policy. And then the other thing that I told guys said, listen, we're going to give you this money. Okay. It's for you to eat. Now, if you go to a bar and you spend that money on liquor and you go out and do something dumb, and I get a phone call from the police, guess what? It's not going to be a good day when you come back to town. And over the course of time, by putting the right people on the team and building the culture and values and all these other things, man, never had any problems. We give them their per diem check. They say, all right, no problem. They go, did they have a beer with them? I don't know. Probably. So what? Who doesn't? They never cause any problems with it. But that was something that just made, because some guys are going to say, man, this whole receipt thing is just such a pain in the ass. We tried everything we could to make it easier for them to travel. And then they said, yeah, okay. But yeah, and when they get out there, man, they bring so much back, so much value they can bring back. It's like, yeah, absolutely, man. I think it's critical, man. If you really want to pursue excellence, nobody's got all the answers. So if you're going to pursue excellence, you got to go out and chase all this information. And you just don't, it's just not going to drop into your city. You got to go out and get it. So I think it's very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you again. Like I say, I appreciate you doing this class for
Yeah,
us.
man.
I hope to see you at firemanship next year.
Yeah.
So,
I will definitely be there.